with Turkey Day tomorrow. I know a lot of people are traveling, and so please be safe in your travels this holiday weekend. And thanks again for coming to our FEBE. And just so, reminder, we are sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts. Please help yourself to some coffee, or I think we have some cider over there. We have Roberta Hudy with us today from TPI, and she's also an entrepreneur herself, and so I'm going to turn things over to her. So, thanks.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. I was hoping to have a day off, too, but, you know, it just doesn't happen that way all the time, right? So I was really thrilled to be a part of this group. I've visited, actually I was invited by Chris Corpus, and it's been really fun to have this group to be part of my entrepreneurial process. So just a couple of months ago when I joined your group, I was with a business startup, and I still am. So this is kind of a part of my intro and why I'm doing the presentation from the perspective that I am. A part of the Pledge Fund, which is a fundraising company based on student achievement. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But since I've joined your group just about, like I said, under 3 months ago, I'm now in a full-time position with TPI Efficiency in business development. So you think, okay, why is this entrepreneur here who has a full-time job? It's because the entrepreneur has a path, and it's not always the one that we think we're going to have when we start, right? How many of you came up with an idea and started a business and it didn't work? Oh, you're all really super successful.
They haven't worked yet.
Haven't worked yet. Okay, that's the key word. There we go. Okay. Well, let me just briefly talk a little bit about myself and then dive in. Roberta Hudy. I live in Avon, Ohio. I'm a single mother of 3 beautiful children. My career path has included small business entrepreneurship, business development. In the construction industry, I was actually a co-founder of a construction company that did very well for about 18 years. Life changed, things happened, and I didn't expect to be thrown back into the workforce, but I was. And that was about 4 years ago. So if you went to my LinkedIn page, you would see kind of that progression, a little more history, so I won't go into all of that. But my education is with Bowling Green State University, communications major. And little did I know how much that degree actually was really going to help me. When I graduated from college, I don't know about any of you that went to college, but some people come out and they know exactly what they're going to do. Like my niece that just graduated from Baylor, like she's, you know, going to walk the aisle and already has the job. I'm like, wow, you're good. It wasn't like that for me. But inside, for me, it's always been passion, business entrepreneurship. My father was a pioneer in his industry in the car wash and petroleum industry. He had the first coin-operated car wash in North Olmsted, Ohio. And I was just a little one then, so I didn't really get the big deal there. But we also had one of the first built-in pools. That I remember a little bit better. But, you know, entrepreneur is kind of in the blood. You know, you grow up with it. We would go to the car wash. We'd count quarters. You know, my dad would get all the coins out. We'd come home, run them through the little, you know, counting machine. I'm thinking, wow, you're really good, Dad. Like you bring actual cash home, you know? So I think it was just always in the blood. But the reason I named this presentation The Power of One is because it really starts with an idea, right? It starts with, and just bear with me here because I'm going to page through. It looks like I'm doing all right with that. It starts with one idea. Sometimes it's one person. That's one of the reasons that I have some of these materials up here that I'll, again, explain a little bit more about. But Steve Jobs, I'm going to pretend that I read that big fat book, but I did not. He is such an inspiration just because he is the power of one person that decided to think a little differently, go against the grain, but knew in his gut and knew right up here that he had what it took to make something happen. So it is the power of one. When we think about inventions, we think about entrepreneurs, right? Some of the ideas I was trying to gather today, and I'm sure you can come up with some really good examples, but I was just kind of looking at some inventions that were early on, that have really impacted how we do things today. The aerosol can, 1926, actually came out of Norway. Thank God for the aerosol can, right? I know it's not good for the environment. I'm still trying not to use it, but the hairspray products definitely work better in the aerosol can. Kind of bothers me, but it's true. Air conditioning, 1902. 1902. So somebody thought of that, right? They're just opening the windows, you got fans, whatever, but somebody, you know, there's got to be a better way to do it. I didn't think of that one. Obviously, I grew up with it. The other one, the airbag, automotive. I thought this was interesting, 1952. Maybe some of you know the history in the automotive industry. I really don't know a whole lot. But I was thinking the airbag was around in 1952. When I was young, we sat in the back of the station wagon over the wheel, what is that called? The wheel hub, whatever. We'd sit back there and, we got in a car accident one time and I was sitting on top of it. So I kind of went up. So I didn't know there was airbags, right? I mean, I thought that was something a little bit more recent. And of course, the airplane, engine-powered airplane. That was just in 1903. If you really think about that, it's really not that long ago, and we've come a long way. So those are some of the examples that just began with an idea. Somebody said there's got to be a better way to do it. Travel, whatever it might be. So in my PowerPoint, I looked at this here when I put it up in my, some of my spacing is a little off, but bear with me. Businesses are normally created, or the think tank process begins because we have what? A problem, and then we want to find a solution, right? So transportation, for example, takes too long to get there on the horse and buggy, got the car, then we're like, why can't we fly? So people just think differently, which seems super strange at the time, but they're willing to go there. So I was thinking about some of the problems and solutions that I've actually encountered or seen in some of the businesses or industries I've been in. Cost of patient transportation. And what I mean by that is, think about the healthcare industry. Right now, of course, it is a booming industry. There's people that are aging quickly. It's a very large segment of our population. And one of the challenges, as all of you also know, as entrepreneurs and business people, the cost of healthcare. It is crazy. Affordable Health Care Act has done some great things. I know my premiums are still going to go up 19% on January 1st. So we've got something to look forward to. But in the healthcare assisted living industry, one of the things that they're trying to do is find ways to cut expenses. So how can we get the patient in front of the doctor without transportation, without the ambulance, the cost of ambulatory services? So the concept that's out there, and it's being developed, some people know it as teledoc, but it's telemedicine. It's being able to put that patient in front of the podiatrist, the primary care physician, at the same time through a internet, my phone's ringing, of course, through an internet connection. So that's a solution to bringing people together, right? Would we think of taking mom in front of a screen to go see the doctor? No, we're thinking about taking her to the doctor. So it's another way to think. Books are hard to travel with. I just kind of came up with that, Kindle. Again, I still travel with the books a little bit. I'm kind of a visual person, love the feel of a book. But when you're on a plane, right, somebody had to think of that. Kindle, let's load our books. It's easier. It's just an easier way to do something. I mentioned one of the business startups that I've been involved in. School fundraising is a pain. And that was one of the reasons I was attracted to the business. And without going into a lot of detail, the founder of the company did a lot of research on fundraising and talked to a lot of parents for about 2 years and did some sample programs. But basically, every parent, and even in my experience in promoting the company in front of superintendents of Strongsville City Schools or a charter school in Cleveland, I said, what do you like about fundraising? Nothing. Really. What's the success of one of your best fundraisers? Well, in a big public school, or large district, it might be $8,000. Like, they did something really fabulous, which is great money. In a smaller school or a charter school, I had an experience. I said, what's been your greatest fundraiser? Well, the parents aren't really involved. We did a bake sale and we got about $30. I said, oh, so you have some challenges, right? So it's a pain. They can't figure it out. They're educating. They're dealing with challenges within their school system. So they need something better than candy bars, popcorn, and trying to get parents to sell it all. So that pain, basically, we came up with a pledge system where you can pledge, instead of buying the candy bar and the popcorn, you pledge on student achievement. So if the student has, the whole school you want to do, or entire district, not an individual student. So somebody would be able to pledge, let's say $1 for every straight A student in the district, or $20 for every 49-yard field goal kick. Do they do that in high school? I think maybe they do. I'm not sure. So it's just a more creative way to engage people in fundraising and actually raise the bar in school. So great concept. I also looked at Shark Tank ideas too, just to kind of give some examples. And this one, I really laughed because I was like, it is out there. Because I don't know about you, but when I get in the car, I like last minute, I'm like, okay, grab that bracelet. I'm going to throw it on when I'm in the car, or I got to write a note at the stoplight, and everything falls down in between the seat. And I'm like, I've got to come up with something to stick in here so it'll catch all my stuff, right? Well, somebody did it. And because it is, my centering is a little off, the product is called Drop Stop. And it actually was on Shark Tank. And I'm like, somebody came up with it already. I hate that. So it's something that is like a plastic insert that you put in between the seat and your console so things fall into it as opposed to going underneath the seat and being lost in the abyss. And I'm like, no way. So they did that in 2013. They actually sold over 250,000 through QVC of that product. So these ideas are really good things, aren't they? The other one that I thought was interesting, because my kids love elephants, but it's called Ava the Elephant, and that was a Shark Tank winner in 2015, where it was difficult to give kids medicine. Anybody been there? I know some of you women have been, I'm sure, and the guys maybe. I could tell you a story on that, but I will not divert. I had a lot of challenges with that. So Ava the Elephant is a little drop stopper that looks really cute, and you can get the medicine, down the kid's throat, basically. And again, I think my screens kind of moved on their own, but that particular product is in over 10,000 retail locations, including Walgreens and the CVS's and things like that. Never knew it. So one of my favorites, I saw this at a Cozy conference. How many of you have been to Cozy conferences, workshops, seminars? Okay. A great organization. I encourage every entrepreneur to get exposed to that organization on some level. But the conferences are usually, the annual conferences are kind of like the fun. They bring in some great speakers. But this idea, I believe I learned through Cozy, was the Bikini. So think about this. If you were a Muslim woman and it was part of your religion to cover yourself wherever you go, that includes the beach. So you're on the beach and you are covered head to toe in cloth. Think about that. That would not be very comfortable. So I do not remember the founder of the person's name that came up with this, but it is a woman. And she came up with, well, why can't they have something almost like a scuba diver would wear? They'd be covered, but it would be material that would breathe, can get wet, they can get into the water, and they can enjoy it. And came up with the Bikini. I'm sorry, but I love that one. It is just thinking outside of the box totally. Does anybody love that like me? I just think it's so cool. I loved it. So here's the thing too. I know with me, I'm kind of the person, especially because I'm what do I want to say, kind of driven, creative. I like to get things done. I don't like to wait for anything. I remember when I first got high-speed internet, and the first time, you went from just like your, help me up, kind of dial-up, right? And then you got your high-speed, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is the fastest thing in the world. And now I go to Google something, and if it goes for even like 10 seconds, I'm like, really? Like, it's just annoying, right? I don't like to wait. But some ideas, some concepts get better with time, and sometimes they not only get better, but they become more relevant, right? So the path from an idea to a solution to the revenue can also be long. So with that first wheel, it might not have been about revenue, it was about function and getting something done. But by the time that wheel's evolved and we've got, what's like the best tire on the market? I'm a blank on things, like a good radial, some high performance tire, right? What is it? Right. So when I bought my car, I have a Hyundai, and the first thing I noticed was, because I'd gone from an SUV to a Hyundai, and I'm like, my first winter, I just started laughing because my tires couldn't even get me out of the driveway. I'm like, really? So I had to get new tires. But so now that last tire, right, is huge business. And there's opportunity for competition and people bringing better things to the table. So my point on this is it takes time and you don't want to give up. And I did give you a little background about my father being the entrepreneur, growing up in that environment. I did work in his business when I graduated from college, and I wanted to own the company. So my favorite magazine at that time was Inc. And I used to, look at the covers, and I'd show my dad. I'm like, oh, look, it's a woman on the cover, And this was back in the 80s. So, my dad was pretty good. What I saw, though, and what I mean pretty good, he was pretty open-minded with me. But at the same time, maybe not as progressive. I think pretty stuck in his ways. And that can be pretty typical, right? So when he entered the market, and this was before computers, we got a contract lighting, special pricing lighting for our industry, car wash and petroleum, with Hubble, GE, and Venture Lighting. And so that's when I came into the business, and I said, okay, so we can sell this nationally. We don't have to stock anything, and we're going to drop ship it to California, and they're going to send us a check before they do, and they get a cash discount. I can do that. So I just spent my time on the phones, doing trade shows, that kind of thing. But we built the business from around 400,000 to almost 2 million, which was a pretty nice accomplishment back in the day. But I soon learned that my father just had different ideas, and our end games were not the same. And that's hard when it's a family member, but you just gotta go, okay, not meant to be. So here's what I learned through that experience, and then also starting a construction business. In those 18 years, let me tell you, was really, I want to say, I guess I didn't know that I was getting a 20-year master's program, but I feel like I kind of did. Let's put it that way. But what I learned is to be sure that you're running with the winners. And what I mean by that, how many of you, maybe just an example of somebody that's recently started a business, or maybe you're under 3 years and you're just getting your feet wet, and maybe tell me the industry. So, and the reason I ask this is because when I mean by running with winners, and it could be somebody in your industry, find out who those leaders are and watch them, study them, find out what they're doing well and why it's working so you can do better. Also, running with winners to me means staying around people that are like-minded. There's a lot of people, and not on purpose. We all are human. We all come from a story. We all come from an experience that affects how we perceive reality. And a lot of times our perception is our reality. Our feelings maybe aren't facts, but it's what we feel, right? But there's a lot of people out there, what I kind of call maybe dream stealers, that will say, oh, that's a great idea, but have you thought of da-da-da-da-da? And then you're like, no. Well, did you think about, how you're going to get funding? Well, not exactly. Did you think about, how you're going to deal with those 3 top performers in your industry in Northeast Ohio? Well, not exactly. Well, did you think you might need a marketing strategist? Well, maybe. But I don't have any money for that. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of go, okay, wait a minute. It's first things first, right? It's the idea, it's determination, and it's being realistic too, right? But running with winners is running with people that are like in this room. We have more than just a business idea. We have a mission. We have something we're passionate about, right? So you want to be around those people. I also learned that it was important to see challenges as opportunities. In the construction business that I mentioned, we started in residential remodeling and waterproofing services. And then we came up with this idea, which actually was plumbers were starting to do it. It was getting to be a little bit of a concept, but like Ohio State Waterproofing, one of the biggest players, of course, would never do this service because they wouldn't actually be able to get as many waterproofing contracts, and here's why. What was called look before you dig, right? Utility company says that. Well, we'll go out to a house, you got to dig out your basement, you need a waterproofing job. Well, what we would ask is, are your sewers clear? Well, what do you mean? Well, did you look through your gutters? Are you clear from the house to the street? What part are you responsible for? Do you know about the capacity of your sewer at the street? What? No, So we started going, let's look into the sewers first, and let's see if you're blocked or not. So we would find out a lot of times they had blockage. They didn't need a waterproofing job at all. They needed their sewers cleaned out, right? Or they maybe needed a repair. Or the drain tile was installed upside down. Imagine that. They were in a hurry to meet that date. So you had blockage. Well, here one day I remember sitting in the office with some of our employees and partner, and I said, oh my gosh, I think we're putting ourselves out of business. Like, if everybody gets a sewer cammering job, they're not going to need a waterproofing job, and then we started laughing. Well, some people still need a waterproofing job or a wall replacement or some more serious repairs, but what we found was a new niche, a way to go, you know what? We can do maintenance. You become a maintenance company. Now you need to do things on a regular basis to look at your sewers. It became an opportunity, right? Instead of going, no. Now, we could be in Ohio State Waterproofing, and I'm not knocking that company. They obviously do a lot of things very, very well, but it's not their approach because it definitely would prevent taking care of your house or putting in an internal system. The biggest one is do not fear failure. I definitely am speaking to myself on this one because I've had a lot of failure. I think I used to look at it as something that was abnormal because I'm a perfectionist. And one of the things that in Steve Jobs' book that I obviously have not read, but I did look at some pictures and read the beginning and the end. He is, that's one of my ADD things. I cannot get through a book. But, I did get through one though. This one right here in the corner, the present. Oh, it's fabulous. That one I got through. And that's because I had to fly to Nashville and it was perfect. So failure. I'm a perfectionist, and Steve Jobs also has this. There's a picture of him sitting in his apartment with a light, not a piece of furniture in the place, and he's just sitting there looking at a book. I mean, there's nothing in the room. And he's such a perfectionist that it was difficult for him to find the right furniture. He would rather sit there with nothing. So I just thought that was really interesting. When I have a clean desk, or sometimes I have to get all the clutter off or just go to a different table and let that be the place that I think because I get distracted. But you can't be afraid to fail. It's progress, not perfection. It's the next right action. It's not about will it be the ultimate idea or the ultimate solution. There's a path to finding out what is. And one of the things I mentioned on here, and I don't know how applicable this would be to everyone, but in the construction industry, workman's comp is a huge issue. So we paid a lot of money to workman's comp based on employees. So we would have in our season probably up to about maybe 40, and then off season, under 20. And we really had a lot of years where we didn't have any accidents. I mean, we're really fortunate. Maybe misfired a nail in a palm or, a little cut, scratch, certain things that really weren't too bad. But then we were anxious. The industry was changing, especially early 2000s, and we had to revamp our business. We were in the commercial remodeling end as well. We did a lot of Burger King renovations for dining rooms and kitchens, and that changed, and we had a lot of eggs in one basket, is the short story. So we were kind of revamping and building up the waterproofing again. And we were anxious. We didn't have employees that, we didn't have enough skilled people. So a guy comes along, and he was hired on the spot. I didn't do direct hire, but I had some responsibility there. But we were anxious. Well, we need this guy, definitely. Okay, so he worked for us 5.5 weeks. He slipped in a hole and injured himself. Nobody saw it. The hole was already backfilled, so technically it really wasn't a hole that had to be shored or anything. We always had our safety in place. We were just waiting for final inspection before we closed it up. He slips in the hole. He leaves the job site. He's injured. He sends a message. And long story short, we put in a first report of injury. He returned to work in 3 days. We did everything we were supposed to do. And this became a back injury, and it became one problem after another. And I spent about 3 years in and out of workman's comp court, depositions with the Attorney General of the state of Ohio, We lost our free legal representation through Cozy. We lost our group rating because it became so crazy. He won the first case in court, and then we won everything after, but then they have the right to sue you civilly, so they sued us in the state. And you know, a lot of people would really see this as a huge, huge mistake, and it was. We hired the wrong person. We didn't take the time to look through and do that background information and look at the actual detail of this person, because we wouldn't have hired him. So after all this happened, I remember probably in the first year, I go and I look at the employee file and I pull it out and I look, and I just looked at his email address. And I don't remember it exactly, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't say it, but it was pretty vulgar, his email address, and I'm like, that just said like a ton about this individual, you know? So my point is, I spent a lot of time, and I think we did as a company, spent a lot of time beating ourselves up about this situation, and it became a major, major distraction to us. But the bottom line is, you know what I learned? Don't do that again, right? Just don't do it again. This is a great example of diversion in small business. It's a great example. You've got to learn to evaluate, be realistic, make decisions. They might be good, they might be bad, but learn from it. And that's one of the reasons I have that book, The Present, because you learn. Has anybody read this book? If anything, I love this. This was great. I mean, it is fabulous. It's a quick read, thank you God, so I got through it. But it's really basically about learning from the past and not staying in it and not dwelling in it. And we really actually had a very good example of it, because something that I wanted to touch on quickly, right? Then it's like the emotion gets in and everything. I mean, I could talk about that I could tell you a million stories. And what's funny about it too is this employee signed off, you know, on the incident, 39-inch hole, slipped in, you know, everything's signed, sealed, delivered. When it got to deposition, I'm sitting there, of course I can't say anything, it's all recorded, I'm listening. So how deep was the hole? Well, it must have been 6 feet because, you know, I'm over 6 feet tall, and I'm just like, really? Like, it's all written down. So it gets pretty emotional. The other thing that I've learned through all of the things that I have done in my career is you are your brand. And what I mean by that is, and I love this quote, I have this at my desk at home, character is much easier kept than recovered. And it doesn't mean that you don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that, you know what, I made a bad choice. I didn't represent my client well. I didn't do the research. I cost somebody something, or I cost myself something. That's life. It's going to happen. But if you have a pattern of ignoring or, you know, withholding information or doing things that are eventually going to come out, that has more to do with your character. And I believe with LinkedIn, and I've learned this especially in the past probably 3 to 4 years, is I'm always representing a company or a brand. If it's my own company, if it's someone that I work for, there's a very specific brand, and I like that to be aligned with who I am. But as I've been in job transition and in different companies, I've realized, what's the brand? So I recently started a job, I'm like not even 2 weeks in, and I am representing that brand. But when I go to my relationships, people go, hey, Roberta, what are you doing now? If I said TPI, Pledge Fund, or back in the day I used to do Arbonne, I did a network marketing company on the side when I had my, this is my passion, when I had my construction business, because, you know, times were tough. So I'm like, all right, I'll sell skincare at the same time. So it really didn't matter what I sold. People were like, Roberta, what are you doing? I've become my brand. And that was kind of hard to assimilate for me a little bit. I heard Jeff Nischwitz, I don't know if anybody has heard of him. I heard him speak one time. He's a coach, author, and this was about right when I got back into the workforce. Long story short, he talks about Facebook, LinkedIn, and he said, they're really the same thing. And I'm like, no, they're not. The Facebook person's over here, and my LinkedIn's over here. It's kind of like who I am in the morning when I get up before the makeup, and who I am after the makeup, I'm like, no, those aren't the same people. But they are. And that really challenged my thinking, because you are your brand. Because you will have ups and downs, you'll have changes, but people are going to know who you are, and that's going to be really valuable. And the last thing I have on there is health is wealth. This is one of my taglines in one of my businesses, because I'm in health and nutrition too on the side. Don't anybody ask me how wealthy I am, okay, please. It's a joke. But health is wealth, and for me that is the definition of wealth, because if I'm not healthy, what do I got? And some of those things, rare, unusual cancers, I could tell you stories personally that I know of, out of your control, right? It doesn't mean that you did something good or bad again. It's not a moral issue. But taking care of yourself, I've learned that there's really nobody out there that's going to do it on a day-to-day basis besides you. And it can happen to you personally, it can happen to you professionally. It's okay to have boundaries, it's okay to take care of yourself, and it's an important thing. Lastly, I wanted to, well, there's two things actually, three things, so I'm not going to say the word lastly. Wanted to share with you 7 traits of successful entrepreneurs, and this comes from Entrepreneur magazine. And I thought this was really good too. So, and again, I apologize, I don't know what happened to my centering, so it's all over the place. But these traits really rang also true, and they might be relevant for you. The first one is, again, traits of an entrepreneur, tenacity. What does that mean? So much of entrepreneurship is dealing with failure. It happens many times each week. And as an entrepreneur, you have to know that's going to happen. And you have to know that it's part of the program. 2, passion. Most entrepreneurs believe they will change the world. Don't you think that's true? I don't know about you, but I'm a little more realistic now. I know I'm not necessarily going to change the world, but I might change the world that I'm in, right where I live, right? There's an excitement and belief in what they're doing, and it gets them through the hard times. And you've got to always go back to that passion, whatever it might be. Tolerance of ambiguity. That sounds like a dad word for me. My dad would always use those big words. I guess it's not that big, but it all boils down to being able to successfully manage fear, fear of humiliation, fear of missing payroll, running out of cash, bankruptcy, and the list goes on. I've been through a lot of those. Vision. This is a big one. And that's why I asked kind of your question, or the question about your business. Who are the players, who's doing it, who are the people in your industry, because you have to have a vision of seeing yourself there and what will make you different from the rest of them. Vision boards, does anybody have one of those? Vision board's real simple. It can be a bulletin board. I kind of have like a framed wood board, and I cut out pictures or things that I want, and I just put them on the board. And it becomes visualization. Vision is so important, and understanding your end game. Entrepreneurs often face naysayers because we see the future before the future plays out. You have to be several steps ahead of the market. Just real quickly, in the pledge fund company that I've mentioned to you, I'm ahead of where those founders are visually, because I know the market is moving very quickly. Technology is everything. We weren't able to get the funding quick enough. It's not a dead deal. I did bring on a school, I'm excited, but technology is key. So some people see it, some people don't. And what used to take, the entire years, right? With Google, some things take 90 days. Some things take, less than 6 months. So it's important. Resources. Self-belief, very big. You have to have a lot of self-confidence. Be willing to take a risk, but be conservative. And that's very true. Conservative and realistic. Flexibility, you have to have a willingness to be honest with yourself and say, this isn't working. You have to be able to pivot. I did a nice pivot and took a job 2 weeks ago. Rule breaking. Entrepreneurs exist to defy conventional wisdom. A survey last year by Ross Levine of the University of California, Berkeley, and Yona Rubinstein of London School of Economics found that among incorporated entrepreneurs, a combination of smarts and aggressive, illicit, risk-taking activities is a characteristic mix. And I love that. Building belief, not only in your brand or your company, if you represent another company, you have to build belief in that organization, but the biggest thing you have to build is the belief in yourself. And it really involves doing things maybe that you're not used to doing and getting comfortable with things that are uncomfortable. I know I want to write a book. I'm not there yet, but I'm going to do it. It's part of your brand. It's part of something that you can do. And I apologize, I forget, it's Mary, right?
Hilaire. Yeah, Mary Hilaire.
Mary, yes. I just loved her nun book. What is the nun one called?
None of this and none of that.
None of this, none of that. I loved it. I just loved it. But it's coming from personal experience, and there's a brand that she's developing there. Take an art class, a voice lesson, climb a mountain, do something different. And I put some of these because it feeds your soul, it strengthens you. I have done some of these things that I've never done in my entire life. And one of them recently was I took voice lessons. It was part of a gift. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, I'll do it. Well, we had to perform. You know, it's School of Rock, you have to go up, and it's kind of like the recital. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never done this before. It's one of the reasons that I can stand here and speak to you, and I'm really not that nervous. Because after I sang in front of a group, 4 songs, I'm like, if I can do that, I can do just about anything. And you have to do something, and it might be something very simple that you're holding back and saying, you know what, I just can't do that. I'm afraid of it. It might be picking up the phone. And get used to the word no. And it's okay to get a no, because when you get no, you're on to the next one that you can get maybe a yes. And don't be afraid to use the word no yourself. Protect your time, if that makes sense. But I really encourage you to do things that strengthen your belief. It's critical. So this last one is really just I think it's my last one. I keep saying that. First time I did this presentation. So these are some organizations, well, 2 of which I'm a part of, and actually there's quite a few that I'm a part of. But Cozy has been instrumental in my entrepreneurial path. I was a member and still am through another company. But as my own business, oh gosh, I think we're members probably over 10 years. I encourage any company that I associate with to become a member. The organization's changed a lot over the years. Sometimes they speak very clearly to a small business individual company, and sometimes they don't, because they're kind of big business themselves. But the network, the Mindshare group that I got into was probably, gosh, that was in 2007, I believe. It was awesome to sit at a table with a consultant that works in the big, retail industry, how to place products on the shelf with Home Depot and Lubrizol and all those things. A guy that manufactured teeth, an IT consultant. I'm sitting here, with a construction business going, how do I do this? And I just sat there and I was a sponge. And it was, to this day, actually we're having a reunion. One of them moved to Boston, but we're having a reunion coming up in the next week or so. It was exceptional. You would pay hundreds of dollars an hour to sit with a consultant and get that kind of information. You've got to get in front of your peers. You've got to get in front of people that know more than you. Don't be afraid to reach out. Urban Land Institute, I'm a part of that organization. I'm on the program committee. It's part of my mission passion, one of the reasons that I do it. It's about building healthy places in the city of Cleveland. And we're doing a lot of things to bring developers, architects, and business people together and find solutions to partner. Love it. The Business Exchange, I couldn't find all my logos last night really quick, but shaking hands, exchanging cards, great organization as well. I'm a small group leader for the North Olmsted chapter. It's similar to BNI in concept, but we're a little bit more relationship based. Again, for me, support group. I mean, they have watched me go through my changes, and it's kind of fun. I go, hey, I got a new business card. They're like, really? Yeah, I do. But it's okay, It's okay to change. Diane Hilbig, some of you might know her, Seize the Day Coaching. I did hire her as my business coach when I was launching a small business with one of my transitions. And it was great. It was great to be able to sit down with somebody and hear the hard facts, because I have the tendency to go, whoo, here's my great idea and I can do anything, to, do you have the business method? Do you have the proof? Do you have the success? So I'm a good employee. I'm probably not the greatest employee, because I'm kind of one of these people, break the rules, right? So I can stay, I can be compliant. I'm okay with that. But you got to give me enough freedom to get things done. Let's put it that way. So, and I had some materials up here that I wanted to share, just because they kind of speak to some of my experience or people that I've actually met. This is a great book, The Resilience Factor. Resiliency is really important, especially if you have, I've had personal illness, I've had, a lot of obstacles, and resilience is about staying connected with others and knowing that you can get through things. Isolation is probably the worst thing you can do. So even when it doesn't feel good, go to the meeting, show up. Coloring Outside the Lines. This is Jeff Toby. He was part of a COSY conference that I went to. Love this. This book is all about coloring outside the lines, exactly what it says. It's he's over the top ADD. He did everything wrong in school and blew it all away, right? Still successful. I encourage you always to keep up with trends, digital technology, as you know. I mean, I never thought I'd be looking at my phone as much as I do for business, not for a social conversation. My kids are always like, get off the phone. I'm like, you don't understand. I'm working. You're socializing. I'm working. Love Dale Carnegie. Marilee McCaskill. I'm not sure if you know her. She's in my business exchange group. Great book, How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age. It's always important when you can, even if you read the front, the back, middle, a few pages, don't worry about it. You can always pick up a good tip. Steve Jobs. One of these days, I think this is going to be when I'm wealthy and I'm sitting on the beach. I promise I'm going to read the whole book. And again, afterwards, if you want to take a look, Pledge Fund. Some of you may be familiar, as I said, business startup. I do have a charter school in place. I'm looking for a technology partner that gets it. Hopefully, actually, I've been talking with Vertium with Deanne, so maybe that'll happen. And then, just for fun, this is a book, and again, The Power of One. This is my little one. But one time, an artist, she asked me, I had my daughter Sophia, and we were in a private school, and she said, oh, I'm looking to do a book, and I need to photograph a baby from, 0 to 12 months. Would you be willing to do it? And I'm like, sure, Well, I knew she was an artist, and I knew, she wanted to write a book. And this is kind of funny, I'm kind of a jokester, but so one time I'm out and, networking with people, and some people are, fun to network with, right? And some can be a little obnoxious. And so they were drinking a lot, and, oh, I've got a book, and I da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, well, I do too. You do? And I'm like, yeah, it's on Amazon. It's called Baby Song. Have you heard of it? No. I'm like, okay. So what it is it's me and my daughter illustrated over the first 12 months of her life. And it's just the coolest thing, because I had no idea when I got this book that it was going to be such a gift. This is like the gems along the way in life, right? I mean, who gets like beautiful pictures like this of their child? So my point of this is, if somebody asks you to do something a little different, especially if you work for yourself, because you can do what you want, right? When you explain to an employer sometimes, like, where are you going? What are you doing? Well, I'm doing it on my own time. Leave me alone. But don't be afraid to say yes, And so technically, I have published a book. It's not really my own, but I'm in it. So if you want to take a look at it. And so I wanted to open it up. I think we have a little bit of time, and I tend to talk a little bit much. It is the first time that I've been through this presentation, so thank you for being gracious. But I wanted to ask all of you, if you could do one thing, the power of one thing in your business or just in your personal life, and if anybody wants to share, that would make the most impact on your business or your life? What would it be? And I don't know if that's something that is actually top of mind for you, but I wanted to kind of ask that just briefly, if anybody had anything to share. Or maybe the power of one thing you did that made a huge difference. You can think about it. And while you're thinking about it, only in this room could I present 3 business cards, right? I would never do this. When I'm out networking, I would never do this. But I work for TPI Efficiency, and it actually is a great story with Roger as well. Roger Zona is the owner, president. And what we do is we are procurement consultants. And Roger was in the telecom business, deregulation of energy. About 6 years ago, he broke off and he said, I see an opportunity. He developed TPI. It was formerly Teleco Pros. And now we do free audits to establish a baseline in spending for companies and show them how to save money with our outsourced procurement program. And we are in energy, which is gas and electric, card processing. We also do waste removal and LED lighting. So it's really exciting because all the businesses, the construction, and everything that I've done, it's kind of like my whole path has built me for this job. So I'm still kind of like my own boss, so to speak. I'm trying to stay in the lines. I do pretty good. I work downtown, so I told him, hey, I'm not showing up at 7:45. So still have a young one at home. So, and then I do have my card on the pledge fund. Like I said, it's more of a mission project for me at this point. I don't give up on things until it's dead, so it's not dead. And I'm also in the health and nutrition industry with Juice Plus. And that's fabulous, and maybe I can present another time on that one, because there are so many ways to be successful. And I just encourage you to find what's best for you. Don't be afraid of different types of businesses or different distribution models, because network marketing, and that's what we do here, right? It all works. So I encourage you to stay passionate, and thank you.